So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Request 101. This is our third webinar of this year. If you are new here, we do aim to run these webinars twice every quarter. And essentially, we do a deep dive into a certain set of MaintainX features related to a specific topic. So, today, we're going to be learning all about requests. And if you have no idea what a request is, that is completely okay. We're going to tell you in just a few moments. So from there, we'll go into some of the differences between requester users versus request portals, then how to submit requests, and finally triaging requests. And this will all be within the MaintainX platform. Now, some frequently asked questions: is this webinar being recorded and will I get a copy? Yes, you will get a copy of this webinar along with some other resources in an email by today, May 21st, 2025. And how can I ask questions throughout the webinar? Well, if you've attended any of our past webinars, you may notice that the screen looks a little bit different today, but you should see a Q&A button on the right side of your screen. So if you do have a question, please submit it there, and please do submit them because we want to make this session as informative as possible for you. We also have some of our lovely members from the support team. We've got Tan and Katrina here who will be ready to answer your burning questions in that Q&A section. Now, for those of us, or for those of you joining our webinar for the first time today, or you're just learning about MaintainX, at MaintainX, our mission here is to transform the way that frontline professionals manage the equipment and facilities that power our world. We're focused on building for the long term by pushing innovation in mobile workflows, real-time analytics, and open APIs. And most importantly, we are partnering with our customers. So we have a world-class team here that develops and supports our products with industry expertise in manufacturing, facilities, and more. But to put it plainly, everything we do here at MaintainX is to make your lives easier. And hey, if you need some proof from someone other than us, you can see some of the awards that we've gotten from G2 on the right side there. So you know that we're not just, talking out of our derrieres, pardon my French, but to put it plainly, that's what it is. There's your proof, because obviously we're going to talk about it very highly, but you want to probably hear some of the feedback from other resources. So there you go. Now, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just in a spicy mood today. So not in a bad way though, a good spicy mood. Okay, now industry-leading companies are putting their trust into MaintainX, and you'll probably recognize a few of them on the screen there. But one thing we really want to highlight is that MaintainX works for everyone. Whether you're a small facility or a global corporation, we've got the tools that you need. All right, I think that's a good intro. So let's get into our topic. Yeah, Mary, requests?
Do it.
If you started using MaintainX, you've probably seen this term, or if you're already running a facility, you may even be using requests and you don't even know it yet. So Mary, turning over to you, what exactly are requests in MaintainX and how do they actually work? And why are they such a valuable part of a CMMS?
Great questions. Let's get right into it. So a request is an initial communication or document submitted to alert maintenance teams that something needs attention, whether it's an asset, a location, or a general issue. So very fancy way of saying a request is someone asking for you to do something. Happens 100,000 times a day for all of us. I know it does. And it involves several different steps, regardless of the kind of format that you're using for this. So firstly, your requester submits a request. They might have noticed a leaky pipe, a down machine, or a safety hazard, or it could even be something just facilities-based. There's a cracked tile over here. Then they send that request over to the maintenance team. The manager then approves that request and converts that to a work order or tells you to go do the work that needs to be done. It fills it out with necessary information and assigns it, and then the technician goes to get the work done and closes the work order, and the requester receives an update. Now, why does this matter? Well, people tend to do requests in a variety of different ways. You could be doing it, say, entirely in MaintainX, where it's streamlined from request to work order to update. Done deal, very quick. But you could also be doing things more ad hoc, and I do find with a lot of my customers that tends to happen. We might get 50% of our requests through our system we were using prior, and then I might get 10% in post-it notes, and I might have 20 people calling me or knocking on my door or just grabbing me when they see me walking the floor. And they might just put it in that way. The problem with having all this decentralized kind of piece of information is that we don't know how long everything is going to take. And if something isn't as streamlined as being in one system, those gaps between these steps right here can be much larger. Think about it this way. If it's within a system, ping, immediately notified, ping, immediately filled out, and the only delay is here when it actually, we need to go and get the work done. But if we're having to wait for that information to then be passed on to where it needs to be passed on, and then wait for that to be communicated all the way back, we're extending the time that all of this takes. And that is directly related to your mean time to repair. The faster we get something done, the more streamlined our communication, the lower our mean time to repair, which is absolutely critical, not only for keeping our equipment online, but also for driving efficiency and reducing downtime in general across your organization. So this is super important to bear in mind. This, for me, I get asked the question a lot by my customers, and I ask it right on back, and it's just why. This, for me, is the why of requests.
All right, well, a question for you folks now. And if you've joined one of our webinars in the past, you know that we do love our polls. So first poll for today, what tools do you currently use to manage incoming requests? Do you use A, pen and paper, B, word of mouth, C, emails and texts, D, spreadsheets like Excel, or E, a CMMS like MaintainX?
Yeah, and just to note, if you're using multiple, select the one that you use the most.
Okay. No right or wrong answers here.
Coming in here. Always no wrong answers. We want to find out a baseline, and we can't be working off a faulty baseline. So don't feel pressured into saying one or the other. All right. Brilliant. Let's have a look there. Now, what we can see from these results, it's quite interesting. We have about 57% of folks using a CMMS for some or most of their requests. This is great news. We then have the rest of the folks there, maybe 43%, so pretty even split there, using things like spreadsheets, emails and text, word of mouth, and pen and paper. And this is really interesting because we did this webinar, keep me honest, Anoja, maybe 18 months ago. And in that webinar, I believe it was a very small amount of people who are actually using CMMS. So we can see things are trending towards actually getting things centralized. And what that shows me is that we can see the value of having things in a system, just like what I was saying before, right? But it might be difficult to make that transition. We might have some people that are kind of lagging. We need to figure out how to do that. So my goal today is to make sure everyone knows how they can put that information in a CMMS and why that would be important to do so. And for those of you already doing so, let's figure out how we can make it a little better. And maybe I can give you some tips and tricks. All right. Let's get into it. What happens when we don't manage our requests well? Something we don't like to talk about, but it's something we need to talk about. It leads to delays, inefficiencies, and lower team morale as well. Why is that? Well, you're more likely to see equipment failures go unnoticed, which leads to longer repair times and increased safety risks. So we know that. Without a clear system in place, I'm losing my mind. Without a clear system in place, it's easy for things to also fall through the cracks. We might have noted that something's wrong. We might have known, okay, we need to go and fix that. But then there's so many things going on, just falls through the cracks. That's entirely possible. And when your team then feels like their requests are being ignored, say you've got all your operators, people around and about putting in requests, if they feel like they're throwing requests and they're just not getting done at any point, it doesn't just slow down the maintenance side of things. It can also lead to frustration and disengagement. And that really does have a cost. I really like the statistic here. $438 billion in lost productivity was caused by a drop in global employee engagement last year. So we want to make sure that we are keeping teams engaged. We're building trust, and we can mitigate that as much as possible. Now, by putting your requests into MaintainX, bling, bling, this is going to provide some structure, and it's going to provide you a way to actually report and address maintenance issues and double check how things are going along. So firstly, you're going to have accurate information, and you're going to have streamlined workflows. I kind of hinted at this a little before with my mean time to repair graph. But you're going to get more accurate submissions thanks to customizable templates that guide users through what details to include. That means less back and forth, a faster work order creation and completion. How many times Have you just been stopped by someone real quick when you're walking somewhere, or sat down at your desk and there's a post-it note saying do X, Y, Z, and that does not give you anywhere near enough information as to what actually needs to be done, and then you have to call them or go find them and find more information. It happens all the time. We really want to eliminate that back and forth by making sure there is a format where people can put all their information in right at the beginning. Next point here, centralized visibility. And I'm going to factor in clear communication to that as well. When everything's housed in one centralized system, you can easily review, approve, and assign requests in real time. So there's no more digging through emails or anything. It's just right there for you. Plus, your requesters are going to receive automatic updates, meaning less time you have to spend communicating to different parties. Everyone's already in the loop without you having to do that step. Last point here, actionable insights. MaintainX's reporting tools give you the insights you need to make smarter decisions and track performance over time. If you've been to these webinars, more than once, you'll know I always like to finish with reporting. It's okay. We know how to do this now, but then how do we keep making it better? How do we focus on continuous improvement for our facility? And we're going to go through that today.
All right. Hopefully you're already convinced about why you should be using requests. Clearly there are a ton of benefits. So let's get specifically into MaintainX. Now, Mary, could you please tell us about the difference between requester users versus request portals, and how can we tell which method is best for our facility?
So this is a really, really common question, I would say. We have two kinds of requesters at MaintainX. There are requester users, and you can also have a request portal. Think of them as separate ways of achieving a similar goal. We'll go a bit more into it here. So starting out with requester users. Requester users are free users that can submit requests from their MaintainX account. So they will have a login, whether that is through their email, like your regular technicians would be, or whether it's through using like a workstation mode just with a pin. They will be able to log into MaintainX, see a very reduced version, and be able to put their requests in that way. This is best for staff who regularly submit requests because it's going to be an ongoing thing. You wouldn't want someone to have to do that just to submit one thing one time, right? It improves in value over time if they're using it frequently. Now, their capabilities, they can pre-select assets, locations, and priorities when submitting a request, so you've already got more context from the start. And they can also track the status of their request every step of the way, from submission to approval to work order creation, comments, completion, all that good stuff. They can actually track that via their app. It could be via their tablet or from their phone in their pocket. So again, those updates going right away. They'll also, fun fact, have the ability to access the messages module, which means they can communicate directly with your team, ask questions, or provide updates all within the app. Again, we're centralizing information there. And because we love a fun fact, 7.47 hours a week lost per employee due to poor communication, costing $12,506 annually per employee. Pretty big number, right? We want to make sure that our communication is streamlined and we can bring that down as much as possible. So to summarize, requester users, they have a login one way or another. They're in the app. They get all the updates. Next point here, request portals. So a request portal is a customizable web-based form where anyone can submit a request for your facility, no app or login required. So that can be either through scanning a QR code, or it could be, you share them a link, like a URL that they can access. And this is great for people who don't have a MaintainX account. They might be, outside of your actual organization. You could think of visitors to your facilities. You could think of maybe contractors. You could think of tenants if we're managing properties. Those are all people who, we want to be able to submit requests, but we don't want them in the system, So this is a great way to do that. In terms of what they can do and can't do, they can link to a preset asset and location if you would like to. If you would like to have an asset, say, per QR code or per location, they can put it in that way. They can't necessarily specify which one if we just have a general one. And the next thing is they will receive email notifications only. So they will receive a notification when their request has been approved or declined and when it's been completed. So they will get some form of communication, but a little less than a requester user would. I'm not sure. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah, you're good. I think so.
Good. I'm glad. You always have to check.
No, that's fair. All right. So we know a little bit about who is submitting these requests. Now we want to hear from you folks. Who do you currently accept request submissions from? Is it A, internal employees, B, external visitors like contractors, tenants? Is it C, which is both A and B? Or is it D, I don't accept requests? I feel like when I say the letters, it sounds like we're on a game show. Like
It really does.
later.
Some points.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. All right, let's see. I am intrigued now. You've piqued my curiosity with the first poll. I want to see if this is going to line up to what I remember from last time as well. And I think it pretty much does. Brilliant. Okay, so results of the poll. Who do you currently accept requests from? 87% of you said internal employees. 11% of you said both internal and external, and 2% said I don't accept requests. For the 2%, I'm curious, is that because we don't know how to yet, or we just don't do it at all? I'm intrigued. For folks who said either internal employees or both, this is typically what we expect. So most of your request volume will come from internal folks because they have a stake in it, right? They want to ask for things to be done. And then for folks who said both A and B, now you have two different methods of kind of addressing things. So we'll give you some more information and we can maybe identify exactly what's right for you. All right. So I wanted to give a couple of examples here that might fit your industry, again, to give you some kind of idea of what's best for you. A way that it's sometimes narrowed down is just saying, okay, if it's an internal person, use a request a user. And if it's an external person, use a request portal, which can be, a generalization, but it's not necessarily always the case. So it's important to think, even if I only have internal employees using the system, who should be what? So let's take a look. Manufacturing. Your operator might use the MaintainX app to report abnormal vibration on a conveyor belt. They may have noticed something's wrong with their piece of equipment and they just want to put in a request, hey, maintenance, please come take a look at this. Makes perfect sense, right? We'd want them to see every step that we're up to, who's assigned to that work, when it's expected to be done, all of that information. Now, in terms of a request portal, you might have, say, a contractor or someone visiting your facility who is using a request portal to report a loose ceiling tile spotted during ceiling work. They might notice things that they might want to feedback to you as well. So we can put that in. Something I would also note here is you may want people, like if we have, we have our floor and then we have our offices as well for people to do, all distribution work there. You might want them to be request portal users as well. If it's not going to be directly related to the piece of equipment, really think which is going to be best for both. Getting into property management, a little different here. A request a user, maybe your building manager uses the MaintainX app to report a strange noise from the HVAC unit on your roof. You're going to want your building manager to have a little bit more information on what's going on and when they can expect something to be finished. Otherwise, you're going to get 6 follow-up calls. However, if we are thinking about our tenants, maybe they use a request portal just to report a leaking faucet in their apartment. You're not going to want all your tenants to be part of MaintainX, nor are they actually going to go to the trouble of accepting the invite, right? So giving them a request portal, just an easy way to put in anything's wrong, going to save you a lot of emails there for sure. And in terms of education, we're going to break this down between teacher and parent. Again, it's following really that internal-external divide there. The teacher uses the MaintainX app to report non-functioning smartboard in the classroom. You're going to want to know which classroom they're at and which smartboard it is. They're going to be able to tag that for you as a requested user. However, a parent might use a request portal to report missing signage in visitor parking. Just a general small request. And maybe they'll get a notification just when it's been completed, and that's all they'd need. Awesome. All right. So let's get into this live demo of requester users v request portals. It's all well and good, Mary, to just talk about these things, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. So let's hop into MaintainX and I'll show you through. Slide across right here. All right. So first thing we're going to want to do is focus on our requester users. I'm going to do this throughout our call today. I'm going to basically always start with a requester user, then go on to the request portal where relevant. So user-based. How do we get our requester users into the system? Well, we're going to start by going to Teams and Users in our navigation panel right here. In fact, I'm going to zoom a little bit. There we go. Then I'm going to go up to the top right-hand corner to invite users. Pretty straightforward here. This so far has just been the same way that you have added people previously into MaintainX if you've added any full users or anything like that. So what we're going to do, put in their email address here, or could be phone number. And then we're going to change this from full user to a request a user. Then by hitting send invite, they would get an invite into MaintainX. So essentially exactly the same process as you've used maybe to invite your admins and your full users. Now this is not going to go through because shockingly, that's not a real email address. Brilliant. When that has been sent to them, all they've got to do is open up that email and click, access MaintainX. I can't remember exactly what the wording says. And boom, they have their account. They'll be in MaintainX. So that's as simple as that. Now we have a couple of different things we can do to control what they see, but I'm going to get into that a little bit later on today. For the purposes of getting them set up, that's all you need to do to pull them into MaintainX. Now, when it comes to what they're going to see when they're putting in a request, we're going to need to go into our settings. And always when we're configuring something, settings and features. Shocker, we're going to go into requests. Now in here, you're going to see a couple of things, and this is configuring how someone puts in a request. So we know we've got the person in the system, but how can they put in a request and what information do we want them to capture? First thing we can play around with here is required fields. We could say you have to put in an asset. You have to put in a description. You have to put in a location. So for mine, for example, I'm going to put in, you absolutely have to put in the location, but attachments, I don't want them to put in attachments, so I'm going to hide that. You can configure this as you want. If you're on enterprise and you have custom work order fields you would like to appear in here, you can also do that. So just let us know. There we go. Now, that's one thing. Don't know how many of you have seen request routing before. This is really handy and it explains roughly what it is here. It's basically going to send the work request to specific teams based on what's in it. So I have this set up in my account here. As you can see, I've got different teams in charge of request approvals. I just take them from the dropdown. So my requesters can send a request directly to operations, maintenance, grounds, safety. And I always like to add in an other in here just in case it's something else, especially if I'm going to make this mandatory, which I absolutely recommend doing. That way, whenever someone puts in a request, they're going to be routing it to the correct team. But if it doesn't necessarily fall under the bounds of those 4 teams I've selected, they can select other. And there we go. That's done. Now, if I go back into my requests right here, something that's actually, I would say, pretty interesting is that it's going to be grouped. You see how here we see not assigned? Keep an eye on that. When we come back to this page later on, you're going to see something a little different. You're going to see them broken down by that request routing team. So that's why we want to do that. And that's essentially all we would need to do to set up request users. We've configured the form, we've configured who it's going to be sent to, and we have also invited them in. Beautiful. Now, for the request portal, it's a little bit different. We're going to go back again, configuration, to our settings and our features, and we're going to scroll down to request portals. Now, Mary, you haven't invited them in yet. Yes, I haven't. Remember, a request portal user does not need to be in MaintainX. You don't need to invite them in. They don't need access in any way. All they need is the link to the request portal. So to set up a request portal, we're going to go to the top right-hand corner, new request portal, and I'm going to call this facilities request. There we go. You can determine what you want your welcome text to be and also the placeholders in here. I'm going to keep it really simple. There we go. And I'm going to say, please let me know where the issue is occurring. We can add in who handles support for that email. So it's going to be me, as I always tell you. I do everything around here. Can't spell my own name though. There we go. And we can configure a couple of settings here. Do we want to send email notifications to the portal requesters with status updates on their requests? Highly recommend we put yes. And the next thing, only allow requesters to identify using their email. So this is a good thing to put if you want all of your requests to get notifications, because it's going to force them to put in an email, which will then give them the notifications. If we don't really care, we'll just leave it blank. Now, we talked about this before. If you want an asset or a location to come through from a request portal, it has to be a specific portal that is designated to that asset. So this, for example, would have to be my portal for my air compressor in this way, or something like that. You can also just leave it general and have an overall portal. And that's what I'm going to do in this case, because I want it to be as widely applicable as possible. Now in here, just like we were doing with our request a user configuration, we can choose what's required and what's hidden. So I'm going to do, I think, the similar thing in here. I'm going to say, I don't want attachments, so I'm going to hide that. And I'm going to say I need the description to be required. And I absolutely want them to put in contact information. And there we go. That's it. Easy as that. Now, if you want to share the link, that's great. You can either just copy the link and then we can open it up right there, but no spoilers. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Or we can print the QR code right here. So you can just print off a QR code, paste it around anywhere that you think it would be relevant. I would say most of my customers go the QR code route because people are just going to be passing by and have a tablet or a phone or something like that. It's much easier than a link, I would say. And that is that. So heading back over here, I would like to go into just a couple of best practices with you. So firstly, we're going to want to make sure we determine who should be a requester user and who should use request portals. Now, we've given you some advice and we've given you some kind of examples, but at the end of the day, it's going to be different for every company, and that's fine. So if you're doing something different, you may be using MaintainX, that's fine. Determine what is going to be best for you to use. And remember, everything's always changeable, right, in MaintainX. So if at first you have people in as requester users and then you think, no portal, you can always remove them. If you start with a portal and think, actually, I want these folks to have more information, you can always invite them. So we have flexibility. Second point here, set up clear request forms by marking required fields and adding instructions to placeholder texts. That's really important. We're going to want to make sure that we're getting the information in that we want. And how do we do that? Well, we either require it or we give guidance. And that's what the placeholder text does. Third point, configure request routing to notify the right people for each request type, right? I do not want my safety team being notified that there is a plant that's dead outside. That is not worth their time to go and look into. We want to make sure the right things are getting in the hand of the right people. Fourth point here, decide what requesters can see. This is specifically for requester users. That's what I was hinting at before. We have a nice little setting on the back end of MaintainX that may interest you. So you can choose if by default your requester only going to see their own requests that they've put in, and they can see it historically, they've got that. However, we can update that so that they can see requests submitted by themselves and members of their team. So then you can make sure you're not getting so many duplicates. And the third option, we can update it so that they can see all requests that have been put in MaintainX. Now, my recommendation, take the middle option. Why? Because it gives context and it removes the amount of duplicate requests that you receive in, so it reduces the admin work on you. But adding all the requests can just lead to confusion and too much information for a lot of requester users. So taking that middle route, usually the most solid way to do it.
All right. Thanks for those best practices, Mary. Love the first one, especially with using both ones and the examples that you gave earlier. And it really goes to show you how MaintainX can help multiple different industries, and especially that property management one, the property management one, can't speak today. I feel like a lot of us can relate to being a tenant and, having to submit a request or having to call your property management office and they're not picking up. It's frustrating, right? So yeah, just a great, easy way to get some work done. So thanks, Mary. Let's talk about submitting requests now. So who can submit requests and what kind of work are requests typically for? And how do requests differ from work orders in MaintainX? Because some people get those two confused. So can you clear the air for us, Mary?
That last point is so important, and we will absolutely go through it. So submitting requests is just the first step in reporting any kind of work that needs to be completed. A request is not the same thing as a work order. Why? Well, because it needs to be approved by an administrator before they can become actionable work orders. And I can see you thinking, no, that's a block in the process. Why wouldn't we just convert them to work orders? Well, can you imagine if every single request that you received or your team received was actually actioned? Not great. We're getting two people being asked different things. They're going right through. We're getting tasks that actually should be directed to another team. We're getting things done today that should be done in 14 days' time when a more important thing needs to be done today. You have absolutely no ability to strategically assign your team and determine priority. That is why there should always be an administrator or someone involved who is able to look at the request and determine what is being converted to a work order and what information is on that work order as well. Whew. So submitting requests still super important. It's going to build a culture of accountability and ownership basically across your organization. You're going to have more proactive team members. You're going to have fewer surprises. You're going to be able to get all that information in. So even if we're going to prioritize things differently, we want all of that volume in, but we want to be able to filter it before it becomes a work order. That is what allows us to prioritize what's most critical, so your most urgent work happens first. Beautiful. I think I'm very persuasive today.
I think so. If I wasn't, working at this company, I would be convinced. So
you'd be setting up requests as we speak.
Yeah, exactly. All right, poll question here. So what percentage of requests for maintenance at your organization gets tracked? Is it less than 75%? Sorry, these arrows, these always trip me up in math class. So A, is it more than 75%? Is it B, 50 to 75%? Is it C, 25 to 50%? Or D, less than 25%?
You got to think of the crocodile. The crocodile goes where it's hungriest.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's one of those things. It's like still when I think of left or right, I use my hands. Same thing with greater than, less than. I'm thinking, where is the crocodile going?
Yeah, I hear you. Can't use when you're driving though. You got to keep your hands on the wheel.
That depends how irresponsible a driver you are.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Hopefully, we're all responsible drivers here. Let's not have MaintainX in the news for.
Fingers crossed. We can only hope. So we have the results of your poll here. So what percentage of requests for maintenance at your organization gets tracked? 49% saying greater than 75%, 20% between 50 to 75, and just about 31% saying below 50%. So again, a pretty even spread there, and I'm intrigued. Something to bear in mind is how can we come up with an accurate version of this number? How do we know that everything is being tracked? How do we know that there are things that aren't just passing us by or being asked to someone that's on our team who's going and getting the work done without it ever being logged? That's the problem of having requests outside of a system, is we just don't know the true volume and we don't know how our prioritization is actually impacted by that. So hopefully having a system in place to help you track these will give you more of an idea into volume, more of an idea into insights of how we typically handle requests or response times, things like that. So let's get into it. Let's get into what do we do with those requests? I'm going to flip my screen. There we go. All right. So we have our request users in. We have our portal set up. But how does that request actually get in my hands, right? Now, I mentioned before, we're always going to be starting with request to users and then go to the request portal. So I'm going to start with request to users. Now, you may notice in here, I'm not able to submit a request. Why is that? Well, it's because I'm an administrator in this account, so I can see everything, see all the modules on the left-hand side here. I don't need to submit requests because I can just make the work order. However, if I were a requester, like I mentioned, we're getting a much more limited view of MaintainX. There we go. As we mentioned before, they can submit requests, they can send messages, and that's about it. So to submit a request, you're going to notice it looks like just a simplified version of creating a work order, actually. So new request in the top right here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to be putting in some information here. So I'm going to say floor tile is wonky, because that would drive me up the wall. I can add a description in here. And I can choose who to assign it to. This is that request routing that we discussed before. So I'm going to send this to safety because that nearly tripped me up. And in terms of priority, well, I'm a requester, so I think this is hugely important. I'm going to put high priority. And where did this occur? It occurred in my maintenance shop. No asset relevant, so I won't select one. And there we go. We have submitted a request. Pretty straightforward, right? Nothing too crazy in there. Now, on the other end of things, how does this work for someone using the request portal? Great question. Glad you asked. So before, I popped the link right here. So this is what would pop up when they go on that link or when they scan the QR code. Oops. Now, don't worry. Yours is going to look far more beautiful than mine does on the screen here. I, of course, didn't put my logo in here. I didn't fill out the welcome information. I've left basic placeholder text. You can customize this, put your branding in, put your desired text right here. I've seen some of my customers, they're really snazzy. And again, this is basically just a simplified version of what we've just seen. So I'm going to submit exactly the same request again so we can compare them later on. So I'm going to say, what was it? Floor tile is wonky. Tell me more about it. Nearly tripped me up. Choose it to assign it to. Again, I think it's safety, and put in my contact information. There we go. And I can choose if I want to receive email notifications. Oh no. Oh no. There we go. That's my computer checking if I'm a robot. I'm really glad that I passed that because I'm not going to lie. Usually I overthink them and it thinks I am, in fact, a bot. So there we go. The request has been submitted on both fronts there. And I think we can all agree it was fairly straightforward to go through and put in both of those requests. It took us not very much time at all. You can imagine both of these accessible through the phone, even quicker, just to be able to go in and type things, snap a quick picture, and off you go. So hopping back here now, what are some best practices? And we've learned through some of my mistakes and some of my successes. First thing, use the placeholder text to highlight what details to include. It's incredibly important to let people know, I want to know the location. I want to know when you noticed this. I want to know what the effect of it was. Put that information in there. Next thing, remind anyone submitting a request to include photos or videos where possible. It's really helpful, right? Again, pictures worth 1,000 words. Much easier to see that. I know a lot of the time, some requests I get say they want me to do one thing and I look at it and it's actually something completely different. So a picture, video, always helpful. Third point, double check if a request has already been submitted to avoid duplicates. This is really going to be helpful if you're a requester user and you can see those other requests. Fourth point, encourage anyone who spots an issue to submit a request themselves rather than asking someone else to do it. And this is huge. Why? Well, because if someone else submits on their behalf, we don't know who the request came from. I can't communicate with them directly for updates. I need that information from them. Now, I hope we're all still awake over here. Let's move on to our next slide.
I think so. Pretty straightforward. And that last one, especially, very important. But we've got one more topic here to cover before we actually end up putting Mary on in the hot seat to answer some of your burning questions. But first, let's talk about triaging requests. So if you've ever been to an emergency room, and hopefully you don't have to go anytime soon, you do know that the first stop is the triage desk, right? Where someone assesses how urgent your visit is. So similar idea in MaintainX. So Mary, could you tell us about what happens when a request comes in? You know, specifically who is involved in the management of requests? Why should we care about managing our requests efficiently? And where even can we review our request submissions?
Totally. All right, let's take a look. Triaging requests. I think Anoja gave a great analogy of it right there. It's reviewing the submissions and turning them into work orders, determining what we're going to do and when. It's typically handled by a MaintainX administrator, so whoever's an admin in your account. It might be a maintenance manager, it might be supervisor, coordinator, lead, facility manager, whoever is right for your organization. If you are on MaintainX's enterprise plan and you do have custom permissions, it might also be a full user who is able to accept requests, because we can do those kind of in-between roles, right? Now, good request management pays off. It leads to higher work order completion rates. It leads to reduced MTTR, like we discussed right at the beginning, and a decrease in unplanned downtime, right? Because we're able to go and address the issue sooner. So this sounds to me like we would most definitely want to do it and get in and get them done. Before I show you how to do that, I think we have a question for you.
So when it comes to triaging requests, what is your biggest challenge? Is it missing context? Is it prioritizing urgency? Is it losing track of requests or just too many channels?
I get no wrong answers. All right, those numbers are moving.
That's pretty quick today.
I know, you guys, great responses here. I'm thinking my assumed prediction may be correct here. Let's take a look. All right, of course, when it comes to triaging requests, the biggest challenge tends to be missing context. I think we highlighted this. I spoke about it a little bit earlier on. Always missing information. Then you got to call someone, find them, say, hey, what do you actually mean by this? That's really important. Beyond that, prioritizing urgency is a big point. Every request person thinks that their request is the biggest request. We're not very good at people of thinking bigger picture. When something comes from us, we think this is the highest priority. Losing track of requests, huge. If it's not in a system, really easy to get distracted by something else. You're on your feet all the time, moving between one thing and the next. It is hard to keep on top of everything. And too many channels, exactly. If I'm getting a WhatsApp from one person and a call from another person and a note from someone else and someone else is putting it in MaintainX, I'm getting confused, too many channels. But absolutely, I think the biggest barrier here is missing context. And that is something that we hope we can help you address within MaintainX.
You even foreshadowed that one earlier with the sticky note analogy.
Oh,
you knew.
Sometimes, there's method to my madness here and there. So, looking here, your request to users and your request portals, wherever your request comes from, it's all as an admin going to come into the same place for you, which is the request module. So you'll never miss a thing, no matter where it's coming from. Even if you've got 2 different channels active for you, you're going to be able to triage them all in one place. Again, streamlining. Let's take a look at triaging those requests. So back into MaintainX. Of course, you're not going to need the portal because this front-facing portal is for your requester. Now here, I can't see what to do with that request. Why is that? Well, it's because I am still a requester. So I'm just going to change myself back to being an administrator so you can see exactly what your administrator sees within the same tab. So bear in mind now, requests, I'm only seeing one. I'm seeing this basic information and I can submit requests. An administrator, voila, it's a little bit different. I can see not assigned to my teams, assigned to other teams too in here. I'm not able to submit requests because I don't need to, but I am able to triage these 2 requests that have just come in. Now, before I get to actually converting these into a work order, I want to show you just something really common that happens and give you kind of an illustration of the difference between a request to user and a request portal. Both of these requests that I made are the same, right? You saw me put in the same information twice. One was from a request portal and one was from a request user. This one right here was from the requester user. How do I know that? It has a priority on it and it has the actual MaintainX location tagged to it. This one here is from a request portal. How do I know that? Because it has no status on it, it has no priority on it, and it has no location on it because I didn't have that in the request forms tag. So this is kind of just one example of how more information can be gathered by a requester user than a request portal and why we make the differentiation between the 2. Now, because I have 2 of these that are the same task, that's also a highlight of how if we don't have things in a system, these may have gone to 2 of my guys in different places, and they both might have taken time to actually look into that and do it, or look into it, fixing it, and then think, no, I'm going to do that later, when actually they didn't both need to be dedicated to that. With this request coming in, I can say, actually, no, one person is going to do this, and they're going to do it at this time. So for my requesters, how do I actually communicate that? Well, I'm going to go to this one right here, and I'm actually going to decline this request. We do give the option to leave a note why, so I'm going to let this requester, me, know that I'm declining this because it has already been requested and will be resolved. There we go. That's all the context that they need. Send it over to them. Now, this requester actually requested with email address, so it will send them a notification of that decline, and the reason why. If that person was a requester user, they'd just be able to see it in MaintainX. Now this one, I'm going to approve this one because we absolutely want to get to it. I don't want anyone tripping up. However, we might need to make some changes. You might want to change the title to match your naming conventions. Oh, Mr. Nen. Maintenance shop. You might want to put it in here. And you might want to add a little bit more information in. I'm definitely going to want to assign this to Anoja. She's great at fixing tiles. I am most definitely going to want to say when it's due. But here, I'm not going to have Anoja do that today. She's busy. She's on a webinar right now. So I'm going to say, actually, this level of task can wait until Friday. And she can actually start it on Friday as well. That's fine. And of course, my requester put this in as a high priority. But do we think this is really the highest priority task that Anoja has to do right now? I don't think so. I'm going to put this down to low. I could even add a category in. And there we go. I have a full work order based on the information that was sent across to me. I have a full work order. I've prioritized it. I've determined who's doing it, when they're doing it, and given all the information needed. Something really interesting that I want to show you quickly on the requester user side. So we know that for people using the request portal, they're just going to get an email notification when it's completed or when it's declined, right? But my requester user, do you see how this has so much more information than before? I can keep them in the loop. They can see, okay, this is open. It's a nudge that's going to be doing it on Friday. Great. I don't need to bug them 4 more times. It's all in there. Conversely, I could add information in here. We said missing and decentralized information before. I could say, hey, I forgot to add. It's actually 2, and they aren't broken. They're just slippy. Whatever it happens to be, we can add information in there and have a conversation back and forth so that everything is in one place. Again, remember that first graph that I showed you? Reducing overall that mean time to repair, making sure things are streamlined. So now we have approved the requests, converted them into work orders. We can see things back and forth. We all know how work orders work, so I won't pursue it on the work orders side. But what I did want to show you was how we can get some insights from this as well. So I'll just make myself an administrator again. I'm going to whiplash between my promotions and demotions here today. And I want to show you 2 things. The first thing is if you go into work orders and you go into your table view here, obviously we can see all of our work orders. I could add a filter that is from a request is yes. And in here, I'm seeing all of my work orders that are from a request. There we go. So you can easily pull up a list and see what's going on with your requests. That's step 1. Step 2, that same filter that I've just shown you there, we can actually see in the work orders tab here. So first thing, always know, make sure you filtered for your desired date range. Then you can add in the filter. Is this from a request? Yes. And there we go. Now, I need to fix my date range on there. But when we have that in here, all of these usual graphs that I'm seeing are just for requests. So if I wanted to see request volume, I would look at my created versus completed, filtered by from a request. If I wanted to see, if I have loads of on hold requests, I would look at the status. If I wanted to see who on my team is completing the most of them, I would scroll down and look at my completed by user, filtered from a request. My on-time ratio with requests, same thing. So every graph that you see within your reporting here, if you filter from a request, you can get all the same insights you get regarding work orders on requests as well. And I think we know requests can be a real source of friction within any company because who's submitting them, what information do they have, how are we performing on them. People always complain their requests aren't being solved fast enough as well. That is a universal experience. You will now have the data to show that. The data to show, yes, actually we are actioning things as fast as they need to be, or the data to go back to our team and say, hey, here's where we're experiencing an area of weakness. We need to fix this. Fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
So let's just go through some final best practices here. Always fill in missing details when converting requests to work orders. Super important. You don't want a half-done work order. 2, Communicate clearly with requesters by using comments and leaving notes when declining. Don't just decline something that's going to result in another request or a phone call or an email. Just pop in the 3 words, it's already requested, and you're good to go. 3, monitor trends in work orders originating from requests and update your PM plans accordingly. So we can see any trends. If the same thing's being requested, 10 times in a row from the operator of one piece of equipment, most likely I need to go back and update my PM plan, right? This is what we're seeing from our reports. You can dice those any way you want. You have that information there with the from a request filter. 4th point here, make request review a regular part of your work order scheduling and assignment process. So always make sure we're going to that request tab, scheduling them as we need to on whatever frequency is best for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mary, for demoing all of that. I know it's it's a tricky topic to cover because you're balancing in administrator reviews and then request reviews. But folks, we promise it's not even that complicated. When you do it yourself, you'll see it's actually a very simple process for everyone involved. Mary just had to flip through a bunch of different roles today because again, Mary does everything here. So I could smile. Mary does everything else. So let's go ahead and talk about some of our key takeaways for today's session. So first, you want to make it easy for anyone entering your facility, whether it's a vendor, a team member, or a visitor, to submit a request when they spot an issue. The sooner that problems are reported, the faster your team can act. Next, admin users play a key role in reviewing and managing these requests. That means checking for urgency, adding any missing details, and either converting the request into a work order or declining it with context. And finally, please, please, please stay on top of your incoming requests by keeping your communication clear and reviewing regularly. So use those comments to keep requesters informed and use those reports to track trends over time so that nothing slips through the cracks. All right, we are at the live Q&A portion of this call. So Mary, are you ready to get into it? Ready for that first question?
I am so ready. And I just wanted to highlight one thing quickly before we started. The thing where it made me select different crosswalks. You don't have to do that every time. That was my computer. That was a me thing. So don't worry about that. Anoja, let's go with our live Q&A. I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1. So how can I ensure the person who submits a request is notified of updates throughout the work? For example, I want to keep a tenant in the know with regards to maintenance being done in their unit.
Yeah, so I mean, you can either have them as a request portal person, and then they will be notified as soon as something, like I say, is approved or declined and then completed. It's a great way of doing it. Or if you had them as a requester user, you can comment back and forth on the work order itself, but also you could use the messaging functionality to communicate.
Gotcha. All right. Question number 2. I have about 4 users who are responsible for managing requests that come through the request portal, but I only want them to see requests that come in for their site/location. Is this possible?
Yeah, should be possible. So what we would do is basically you'd have a portal per location, and then they would put ones into that specific portal. It's going to tag them to that correct location, and we can do some settings to make sure that the visibility is set correctly for those people approving the requests, and we can even use request routing for that. So yeah, if you want to kind of control what people can and can't see and what they can and can't approve, let us know, and we can configure that with you.
Gotcha. Okay. Question 3, can we have requesters contact us if they have any questions before submitting a request, or reach out to us to follow up on the requests if they need to?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can include that information within your welcome text on your portal as they have that information there. And yeah, I like this a lot, giving them away. I think a blocker sometimes, if someone sees something, they don't know how to use it. It's just, oh, well, I'm not going to use it. But if you have the, hey, call me if you need assistance the first time around there, that can be a great way to do it. So yeah, absolutely. You can include that.
Yeah, great idea. It makes life so much easier. Okay, question 4. Can I see the amount of requests that were submitted and how many were approved versus denied for my assets or locations?
Yes. If you want to see how many requests you had coming through, you're just going to go into your reporting section. Again, you can filter from a request is yes, and then you can group by asset in any of the reports to see how many have been made for each individual piece of equipment.
Gotcha. All right. Last one. We haven't stumped you yet. And I don't think we're going to, but question number 5, How can I see if someone else in my team has submitted a request about the same issue?
Right. So we're saying how can I tell if something's already been requested before I put my request in myself? Yeah. So that's what we can do, the visibility settings that we can set for you. So we can make it so that they can see requests that have been submitted by people in their team already. And then we'll just have to tell them, hey, make sure you check the requests that have already been submitted and are active before you put in another one. That's going to be your best way of doing that. And one quick add, I've seen a couple of questions that are interesting come through in the chat. First thing, yes, recorded, going to be sent to you. You can have that there. Someone asked a really interesting question. If a tech makes notes on the work order, does the requester see those notes? It depends where they are and who submitted it. So if you have a requester user that submitted something and you're putting, comments on the work order back and forth, yes, they can see those comments. However, they wouldn't be able to see like the procedure being filled out. So you can put something in there. The other thing could be if they're coming from a request portal, no, they're not going to be able to see those comments because they can't actually access MaintainX. If you would like them to be notified about comments on a work order, reach out to us. We can maybe figure something out there, but for the most part, no.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, Mary, as always, you have crushed the Q&A. So thank you so much. I'll give your voice a break there. For the folks on our call, we've got one more poll, just a quick one here before you head out. Just a simple pulse check on how you felt about today's session. It only takes a second and it really helps us to understand what's landing well. You'll also get an email later today with a link to a short survey. So if you've got a minute to share more detailed feedback, we'd love to hear it. We do genuinely use what you tell us to shape future webinars and make sure that they are actually helpful. So every response truly counts. And if you're not using MaintainX yet, but want to see how it could work for your team, then click the button on your screen to book a demo. Someone from our team will follow up and walk through it with you. And in the meantime, you can also explore at your own pace with these resources. So first up, we've got MaintainX Academy. I mentioned it earlier. This is our self-paced learning hub. And here you'll find certification courses, step-by-step guides, all of our past webinar recordings, plus quick how-to videos for when you just quickly need to figure out how to do something in MaintainX. And then there's the MaintainX community. And this is where a lot of maintenance professionals like you can connect, share your insights, and get answers to your questions. So if you've got a question, there's a good chance that somebody else has the same question. So jump in there, start a discussion, and learn from others in the same field as you. And then finally, we've got a few other webinar options. So there's the Feature 101 webinar, which you're in right now. We've got office hours where you can join Mary and another one of our CSMs for a Q&A session similar to the one that we just had, where you can ask them live some of your questions about MaintainX. And then there's also MX Masterclass, which is our newest series featuring industry leaders talking about key trends and best practices in maintenance. In maintenance. Oh my gosh, I want to say MaintainX, but I'm trying to say in maintenance. So lots of resources for you to check out. If you missed any of the links or the buttons on the screen, don't worry. These are all going to be sent to you after this webinar. But Mary, if there's anything else from your end, are we good? We're good to
all good from my end. It's a pleasure to see you all again. Thank you so much for joining today. It's always a joy to get to go through MaintainX with you.
For sure. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at the next one, hopefully. Bye for now.
Bye.